The great hall of the Ardini Council fell silent as Ambassador Thila stepped forward. Her blue skin looked pale under the dim lights as she faced the 12 elders seated in a half-circle before her. "We have no choice," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our outer colonies are falling. The Vorn will reach our homeworld within 2 cycles." Elder Vorn nodded slowly. "Then we must find them. The humans." For centuries, the Ardini had lived in peace, spreading across 27 worlds in their corner of the galaxy. They were scholars and artists, not warriors. When the Vorn Empire began their attacks 6 months ago, the Ardini had tried to negotiate. They had offered resources, knowledge, even territory. The Vorn had responded by destroying their largest colony. 8 million dead in a single day. "The records are very old," Thila said, bringing up a holographic display. "Humans were considered primitive when our explorers found their world 300 years ago. But they showed unusual talents for warfare." The display showed images of ancient human conflicts. While technologically simple, the scale and intensity shocked the gathered elders. "Can such a species even be trusted?" asked Elder Mira. "We have no other options," Thila replied. "The Vorn will not stop until we are extinct." 3 days later, Thila stood on the bridge of the last Ardini long-range ship. With her was a crew of 20, all volunteers. Their mission was clear but dangerous. Find Earth, convince humans to help, and bring them back before the Ardini civilization was wiped out. "Jump calculations complete," said the pilot. "May the stars guide us." The ship vanished into the darkness of space. Admiral James Walker was having a bad day. Budget meetings always gave him headaches, and arguing with politicians about defense spending was his least favorite part of the job. "Admiral, we have a situation." His aide rushed into the office, face pale. "Sir, NORAD has detected an unknown craft entering Earth orbit. It's not one of ours." Walker's headache was suddenly forgotten. "First contact?" he asked, already reaching for the secure phone. 12 hours later, Admiral Walker stood in a secure conference room deep beneath the United Nations building in New York. With him was UN Secretary General Anna Davis and representatives from the Security Council nations. Across from them sat the strangest beings any of them had ever seen. Tall, slender creatures with blue skin and large, expressive eyes. "We are the Ardini," said their leader, a female named Thila. Her voice was translated through a device on her wrist. "We have come to ask for your help." Secretary Davis leaned forward. "We are honored by your visit, but I'm confused. You crossed light years of space to ask for our help. Your ship alone demonstrates technology far beyond our own." Thila nodded. "We have better ships, yes. Better medicine, better science. But there is one thing we never mastered." She paused. "War." The room grew quiet as Thila showed them images of the Vorn attacks. Entire worlds burned. Billions dead. A systematic genocide spreading across Ardini space. "The Vorn Empire will not stop," Thila explained. "They consume all in their path. After us, they will find you. Perhaps in 50 years, perhaps in 100, but they will come." Admiral Walker studied the tactical displays with growing interest. "Their ships are impressive, but their formations show weaknesses. They rely too much on overwhelming force rather than strategy." Thila looked at him with surprise. "You already think of how to fight them." "That's his job," Secretary Davis said quietly. The meeting continued for hours. Questions about Vorn numbers, their weapons, their tactics. Nothing about peace talks or diplomatic solutions. Finally, Secretary Davis called for a break. As the human representatives filed out to discuss in private, Thila turned to her aide. "Did you notice?" she whispered. "They asked nothing about negotiating with the Vorn." Her aide nodded slowly. "They went straight to questions of war." "Perhaps we have made a mistake," Thila said, looking at the closed door where the humans were now talking. "These humans, they think differently than we do." "We had no choice," her aide reminded her. The Vorn gave us no choice. Thela gazed out the window at the sprawling city of New York, with its towering buildings and millions of humans going about their lives, unaware that visitors from another world were deciding their fate. "May the stars forgive us for what we might unleash," she whispered. 3 Earth weeks after the first meeting, Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around him, 5 other battle cruisers moved in formation as they exited the jump point into Ardini space. "Status report," Walker said, his eyes fixed on the main screen. "All ships reporting green, Admiral," replied Commander Tom Harris. "We've arrived at the coordinates provided by Ambassador Thela." Walker nodded. This was humanity's first venture beyond their solar system, made possible only by the jump drive technology the Ardini had shared. It was a gesture of trust, or desperation. "Open a channel to the Ardini escort vessel," Walker ordered. The face of Thela appeared on screen. "Admiral, welcome to Ardini space. I must warn you, we are approaching a dangerous area. The Vorn raided this sector only days ago." "That's exactly why we're here, Ambassador. My assessment team needs to see the enemy's work firsthand." Thela's expression showed concern, but she nodded. "Follow our vessel to the colony of Lumina. Please, prepare yourselves." The small fleet moved toward the 4th planet in the system. As they approached, the sensors began picking up debris, massive amounts of it. "Sir," said the sensor officer, her voice tight. "Those readings, that was a city." Walker's jaw clenched as the ships entered orbit. The planet below showed scars visible even from space, impact craters and burning forests. Where cities had once stood, only smoking ruins remained. "Prepare the landing party," Walker ordered. "Tell Captain Reed to take his team down." Captain Mark Reed had seen war zones before. 20 years in special forces had taken him to the worst places on Earth, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Spread out. Secure the area," he ordered his team of 12 as they exited the shuttle. Each wore the new Defender combat suit, designed to protect against unknown alien threats. They stood in what had once been the main square of Lumina's capital city. Now it was a graveyard of broken buildings and burned bodies. "Sir," called Lieutenant Wilson, kneeling beside one of the bodies. "These civilians, they weren't just killed. They were—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Reed moved closer and immediately wished he hadn't. The Ardini victim had been systematically taken apart, organs removed while still alive. "They're not just killing," Reed said grimly. "They're harvesting." The team moved through the ruins, documenting everything. They found evidence of precision orbital strikes, followed by ground forces that had hunted down survivors, not for quick execution, but for careful, methodical processing. "Captain," Kane Walker's voice over the comm. "What are you seeing?" Reed looked around at the devastation. "This isn't war, Admiral. It's butchery. They're treating the Ardini like cattle." "Any signs of resistance? Defensive positions?" "None, sir. The Ardini had no weapons, no fortifications, nothing. They didn't even try to fight back. They just died." Walker was silent for a moment. "Complete your survey and return to the ship. I've seen enough." Back on the Defender, Admiral Walker met with his senior officers in the war room. The displays showed the data collected from Lumina and 3 other destroyed Ardini worlds they had visited. "The Vorn have a pattern," Walker explained, pointing to the tactical display. "They hit population centers first, then communication hubs. They want to create panic before they land their harvest teams." Commander Harris studied the Vorn ship designs they had captured on long-range scans. "Their technology is advanced, but their tactics are straightforward. No subtlety." "They've never needed it," Walker replied. "The Ardini never fought back." Ambassador Thela entered the war room, her face showing the strain of seeing her people suffering. "Have you completed your assessment, Admiral?" she asked quietly. Walker looked at her, his expression hard. "Yes, Ambassador. My report to Earth will be clear. The Vorn aren't just conquerors. They're exterminators, and they need to be stopped. Then you will help us. Hope crept into Thiela's voice. Walker's eyes narrowed. Help is not the word I would use, Ambassador. What we're going to bring is something your people have never seen before. What is that? She asked. Total war. The room fell silent as Admiral Walker stood before the holographic display. Around him, 20 human officers and 5 Ardini representatives watched intently. Operation Thunderbolt begins in 6 hours, Walker said, pointing to the glowing map of the Lyra system. The Vorn currently hold this Ardini colony with approximately 30 ships and 1 ground base. Intelligence suggests they're processing captives there. Commander Lisa Reeves, a tall woman with short gray hair and a reputation for bold tactics, stepped forward. My team will lead the ground assault. We'll drop behind their defense grid here. She pointed to a mountain range and moved toward the processing center. Thiela looked troubled. The Vorn outnumber your forces. Their ships are larger than yours. Walker allowed himself a small smile. Size isn't everything, Ambassador. As the meeting ended, Thiela approached Walker privately. Admiral, I must ask, what are these weapons your ships carry? Our scans cannot identify them. That's intentional, Walker replied. Let's just say humanity learned to split the atom a long time ago, and we've improved on the concept since then. Thiela's large eyes widened as understanding dawned on her. You're using nuclear weapons. No, Walker said. Something much more precise. The Vorn are about to learn that humans fight to win. The Vorn battlecruiser Dominant patrolled the outer reaches of the Lyra system. Commander Greg stood on its bridge, bored with this simple assignment. The Ardini livestock of this world were nearly processed, and soon they would move on to richer feeding grounds. Commander called a sensor officer. Unusual readings at the jump point. Greg grunted with disinterest. Probably debris. No, sir. Energy signatures. Multiple vessels emerging. Greg moved to the console just as alarms began blaring across the bridge. The sensor screen showed 6 ships materializing from the jump point, ships of unfamiliar design. Unknown vessels, the communications officer reported. They're broadcasting a message, in Ardini language. Put it on, Greg ordered. A human voice filled the bridge. Attention Vorn forces. This is Admiral Walker of Earth. Your genocide ends today. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Laughter erupted across the Vorn bridge. Greg silenced them with a gesture. These primitives dare to challenge the Vorn Empire. He bared his yellow teeth in what passed for a smile among his kind. Prepare weapons. Show them what happens to those who interfere with our harvest. The first plasma blast from the Vorn ship passed harmlessly between the human vessels as they split formation. What happened next would be studied in Vorn military academies for generations, if the Vorn survived long enough to have future generations. The human ships did not fire energy weapons as expected. Instead, they launched what appeared to be small, primitive missiles. Pathetic, Greg muttered as the point defense systems easily targeted the incoming projectiles. Then the missiles split open, each releasing hundreds of smaller objects that scattered in all directions. What is this? Greg demanded. His question was answered when the first penetrator struck his ship. Designed to punch through the strongest armor, the tungsten rod traveling at near relativistic speed passed cleanly through 3 decks before detonating its core. Within seconds, the Dominant was hit by 17 more. The mighty ship began breaking apart, secondary explosions ripping through its hull. As his bridge collapsed around him, Greg's final thought was simple disbelief. On the planet below, Commander Reeves led her team through the ruins of what had once been an Ardini city. They moved like ghosts in their powered armor, each soldier connected through an advanced tactical network. Contact ahead, whispered Lieutenant Parker through the comm. Vorn Processing Center. I count at least 50 hostiles, and God help us, hundreds of Ardini prisoners. Reeves studied the facility through her enhanced vision. The Vorn had converted a sports arena into a slaughterhouse. Strike teams in position, She reported to the defender overhead. Request fire support package Alpha. Moments later, precision strikes hit the Vorn defensive positions. As the aliens rushed to respond, Reeves gave the order. Move in. Free those people. The battle was swift and merciless. The Vorn, used to unresisting victims, found themselves facing soldiers trained in centuries of human warfare. Reeves herself led the charge into the main holding area, her railgun cutting down Vorn guards with surgical precision. When it was over, Reeves stood among the freed Ardini prisoners. They looked at their human saviors with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Who? What are you?" asked one elderly Ardini. Reeves removed her helmet. "We're humans, and we've come to take back your world." News of the defeat at Lyra spread quickly through the Vorn Empire. In the grand chamber of the Imperial Palace, Supreme Commander Draz paced before the Emperor, his claws clicking against the polished stone floor. 17 ships destroyed. An entire processing center lost, all by an unknown species called humans. Draz reported, his voice tight with anger. Emperor Vex leaned forward on his throne, eyes narrowing to yellow slits. These humans, where did they come from? They appear to be allies of the Ardini. Our intelligence suggests they come from a distant system, previously considered too primitive to be of interest. The Emperor slammed his fist down. I want them crushed. Immediately. I have already dispatched 3 battle fleets, my Emperor, 67 ships total. The humans will be nothing but space dust within days. Admiral Walker studied the holographic display on the Defender's bridge. Red dots representing Vorn fleets moved across the star map, converging toward their position. They're responding exactly as expected, he said to Captain Reed, who stood beside him. They're sending overwhelming force, taking the bait. That's a lot of ships, Admiral, Reed observed. Our fleet is outnumbered 4-1. Walker nodded, which is why we won't be fighting them directly. He tapped his comm. All ships, initiate Operation Shadow Dance. Across the human fleet, engines flared as the ships broke formation and scattered in different directions. Instead of preparing for a head-on battle, they were disappearing into the darkness of space. On the command channel, Walker addressed all captains. You have your assigned targets. Strike fast, strike hard, and vanish before they can respond. On Earth, the factories had not stopped running for weeks. President Laura Bell stood in the massive underground facility in Nevada, watching as automated systems assembled the next generation of weapons. How quickly can we get these to the front? She asked General Williams, who guided her through the facility. The first batch ships tomorrow via the Ardini jump point, he replied. We've adapted their drive technology to our cargo ships. The process is still inefficient, but it works. The president stopped before a particularly large device being loaded into a transport container. And this is Project Sundown, Williams explained. Dr. Foster's team designed it specifically to counter Vorn shielding technology. It creates a localized disruption in spacetime that simply bypasses their defenses. Bell nodded slowly. The Joint Chiefs assure me this escalation is necessary. Madam President, the Vorn have exterminated billions of Ardini. The evidence we've gathered suggests they won't stop with one species. They're methodically harvesting their way across that sector of the galaxy. And we're next on the menu. She finished his thought. Eventually, yes. Admiral Walker's reports are clear. The Vorn see other sentient species as nothing more than resources to be consumed. Bell looked around at the massive war production. After centuries of fighting among themselves, humanity had finally united against a common enemy. History will judge whether we did the right thing, she said quietly. Ambassador Thela watched with growing unease as human soldiers unloaded crates of weapons on the Ardini homeworld. For generations, her people had been peaceful. Now their cities were becoming armed camps. Your people learned quickly, Walker said, approaching her observation platform. Is this necessary? She asked, gesturing to the fortifications being constructed. The Vorn have never reached this far into our territory. They will, Walker said simply. And when they do, your people need to be ready. Thela turned to face him. There is something I don't understand, Admiral. The Vorn outmatch you in technology and numbers. Yet you seem confident. Walker's expression hardened. Throughout our history, humans have rarely had the advantage in numbers or technology. We learned to fight smarter, not bigger. And what does that mean for the Vorn? It means they made a critical mistake. Walker looked up as a squadron of human fighters screamed overhead in formation. They assumed that because you were peaceful, anyone who came to help you would fight a peaceful war. Thela felt a chill despite the warm day. There is no such thing as a peaceful war, Admiral. Exactly, Walker replied. And that's the one lesson humanity has learned better than any species in the galaxy. The emergency alert woke Dr. Alan Foster from a deep sleep. He fumbled for his tablet, eyes struggling to focus on the screen. The message was brief. Proxima Colony under attack. Vorn fleet. Civilian casualties. Foster dressed quickly. As head of Earth's Advanced Weapons Division, he knew he would be called to the crisis center immediately. Humanity had established its first extrasolar colony just 3 months ago. Now it was under attack. When he arrived at the underground command center, the scene was grim. President Bell stood before a large screen showing live feeds from Proxima Colony. Buildings burned. Bodies lay in streets. The Vorn had struck without warning. Casualty report, Bell demanded, her voice tight. Early estimates at 7,000 dead. Madam President, replied General Williams. The colony had minimal defenses. The attack appears to be in direct response to our operations in Ardini space. Foster watched the footage, something cold and hard forming in his chest. Those were human children being cut down. Human settlements burning. Dr. Foster, the president said, turning to him. Project Sundown. Is it ready? Foster hesitated only briefly. The final tests were scheduled for next week. But yes, the prototypes are functional. Deploy them, she ordered. All of them. Supreme Commander Draz stood triumphant on the bridge of the Imperial destroyer. The attack on the human colony had been a glorious success. These primitives needed to learn their place in the galactic order. Commander, his sensor officer called out. Jump signatures detected. Multiple human vessels appearing. Draz sneered. So they've come to witness our victory. Excellent. The view screen showed 3 human ships emerging from jump points. They were smaller than his command vessel, barely the size of support ships. They send such a pathetic response. Draz laughed. Open fire. Destroy them. The massive Vorn ship directed its forward batteries at the nearest human vessel. Energy beams lanced out across space and passed directly through the human ship as if it wasn't there. What trickery is this? Draz demanded. His question was answered when the first sundown device activated. There was no explosion, no flash of light. Instead, a sphere of distorted space expanded from the human ship, passing through the Vorn vessel's shields as if they didn't exist. Where it touched the ship, matter simply disappeared. Within seconds, half of the Imperial destroyer was gone, the edges of the remaining structure perfectly smooth, as if cut by an impossible blade. As life support failed and his ship died around him, Draz finally understood. The humans didn't fight like the Ardini. They fought like demons. Operation Steel Rain is now underway. Admiral Walker reported to the combined Earth-Ardini Council. Simultaneous strikes on 17 Vorn worlds. Their central command structure is in disarray. On the screens around the room, footage showed human ships deploying the new sundown devices across Vorn space. Entire fleets were being erased from existence. Ambassador Thela watched with growing horror. These weapons, they violate the laws of physics as we understand them. Space-time manipulation, Dr. Foster explained, his voice clinical. We simply create a localized pocket where matter cannot exist in its normal state. And the Vorn within these pockets? Thela asked. Foster's face showed no emotion. They ceased to exist. Painlessly, if that matters. Phyllis stood suddenly. This is genocide. You're doing to them exactly what they did to us. Walker shook his head. No, Ambassador. We're targeting military assets only. Unlike the Vorn, we don't harvest civilians. For now, Phyllis said quietly, but I see something in your eyes that frightens me, Admiral. Something I never saw in the Vorn. What's that? Walker asked. Righteousness. Thela looked around at the human leaders. The Vorn kill because it was their nature. You kill because you believe you're right to do so. I'm not sure which is more dangerous. The room fell silent as the screens continued to show Vorn ships disappearing into the void. We asked for your help, Thela whispered, but I fear we've unleashed something far worse than the Vorn upon the galaxy. Walker met her gaze steadily. You asked for human help, Ambassador. This is what humanity brings when pushed to war. Perhaps you should have studied our history more carefully before you came to Earth. Intelligence Officer Jane Wilson had not slept in 3 days. Her small office aboard the UES Defender was filled with data screens, each showing different information streams captured from Vorn communications. For months, she had been searching for one specific piece of information, the location of the Vorn homeworld. The Vorn had hidden it well, using complex relay systems to mask its coordinates. But Wilson had finally found a pattern in their supply ship movements. She pressed the comm button. Admiral Walker, I found it. 30 minutes later, the senior command staff gathered in the war room. Wilson stood before the star map, highlighting a previously unexplored sector. Here, she said, pointing to a star system near the galactic core. All communication paths lead back to this point. Analysis of their ship movements confirms it. This is the Vorn homeworld. Walker studied the map carefully. You're certain? Wilson nodded. Yes, sir. And there's something else. She brought up another data set. Their communications show massive resource movements inward. They're fortifying their home system. They know we're winning. Walker's eyes narrowed. Then it's time to end this. Prepare a battle plan for a direct assault on their home system. Captain Reed, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Admiral, even with our technological advantage, a direct assault would be costly. They'll have everything they've got protecting their homeworld. I'm aware of that, Captain, Walker replied. That's why you'll be leading a special team to the surface while the fleet engages their defenses. Reed's expression remained neutral, but his eyes showed understanding. This would be the most dangerous mission yet. The largest human fleet ever assembled emerged from jump points around the Vorn home system. 57 ships, ranging from small strike craft to the massive dreadnought Humanity's Vengeance. On the bridge of the Defender, Walker watched as the Vorn response took shape. Hundreds of enemy ships moved to defensive positions around their homeworld. They've been expecting us, commented Commander Harris. Walker nodded, but they haven't seen everything yet. Begin Operation Final Thunder. Across the human fleet, new weapons powered up. The latest generation of sundown devices, coupled with conventional weaponry, targeted the outer defensive ring. The battle that followed would later be described as beautiful in its terrible efficiency. Human ships moved with precision, creating gaps in the Vorn defenses, then exploiting them before they could be closed. On the Vorn command ship, Emperor Vex watched with growing dread as his defenses crumbled. How is this possible? He demanded of his generals. They are one species, one small world. No one had an answer for him. Captain Reed's dropship burned through the atmosphere of the Vorn homeworld, followed by 5 others. Each carried a team of Earth's most elite soldiers, equipped with the best weapons humanity had developed. 60 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. Reed checked his rifle one last time. Remember the plan. We move fast, we hit hard, and we reach the Imperial Palace before they can organize a response. The ships landed in what appeared to be a massive park in the center of the Vorn capital. As Reed and his team exited, they got their first look at the Vorn homeworld. Unlike the sterile military facilities they had encountered before, This was a place of beauty. Towering structures of crystal and metal rose into the sky. Waterways flowed between grand boulevards. "It's beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Wilson. "Stay focused," Reed ordered. "Move out." The teams advanced toward the massive structure at the city's center, the Imperial Palace. They encountered surprisingly little resistance. Most of the Vorn military was in orbit, fighting a losing battle against Walker's fleet. When they reached the palace gates, however, they found them heavily guarded. "Looks like we'll have to fight our way in after all," Reed said, readying his weapon. Before he could give the order to attack, the massive doors swung open. A single Vorn stepped out, unarmed, wearing elaborate robes. "I am Chancellor Krav," the Vorn announced. "Emperor Vex requests to speak with your leader." Reed kept his weapon trained on the Vorn. "Why should we trust you?" Krav's expression was unreadable to human eyes. "Because we have discovered something about your kind that has changed everything. Something in our ancient records." "What's that?" Reed asked. "You have been here before," Krav said simply. 10,000 years ago, Captain Reed stood before Emperor Vex in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace. Admiral Walker had joined him on the surface, along with Ambassador Thela. The massive chamber was silent except for their footsteps on the polished stone floor. "So it is true," Emperor Vex said, his voice surprisingly soft for such a fearsome creature. "You are the destroyers from our ancient texts." Walker's expression remained neutral. "We have no knowledge of ever visiting your world before." Chancellor Krav approached with a stone tablet, clearly ancient. On it was a crude but unmistakable image of humans in battle posture. 10,000 years ago, your kind came to our world," Krav explained. "Back then, we were not the Vorn Empire. We were simple farmers, being harvested by another species called the Krell." Thela gasped. "The Krell are just a myth. Ancient destroyers who vanished mysteriously." "Not a myth," Vex continued. "They were very real. They farmed our world for generations until humans arrived. The humans fought as you fight now, with terrible efficiency. They destroyed the Krell completely." Walker exchanged glances with Reed. Human history had no record of interstellar travel thousands of years ago, let alone an alien war. "Before the humans left," Krav said, "they told our ancestors, become strong, never be victims again. We built our civilization on that command. You became the very monsters you feared," Thela said quietly. Vex lowered his massive head. "We became strong. Too strong. We forgot what it meant to be prey and learned only to be predators." Walker stepped forward. "Your empire ends today, Emperor Vex. The question is whether your species ends with it." 3 days later, on the Defender's Bridge, Walker watched as Vorn representatives signed the formal surrender document. The terms were harsh but not genocidal. Complete disarmament of the Vorn military, reparations to the Ardini, and oversight of Vorn worlds by a new interstellar peacekeeping force. "The Senate has ratified the peace treaty," President Bell informed him through the comm. "Congratulations, Admiral. The war is officially over." Walker nodded, but his expression remained solemn. "The fighting is over, Madam President. Building the peace will be harder." Later, he found Thela in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "Your people will rebuild," Walker said, joining her at the viewport. "Earth will help." "At what cost?" Thela asked. "My people have changed. I see them training with weapons, speaking of revenge. We were peaceful for thousands of years. Now we talk of never again, and building our own warships." Walker sighed. "War changes everyone it touches. But remember, humans aren't just warriors. We're also builders, teachers, healers. Yet it was your capacity for war that saved us," Thela observed. "I've been studying your history. Your kind has fought countless wars against yourselves. Perhaps that's why you were so prepared to fight the Vorn." "Perhaps," Walker admitted. "But we've also worked just as hard for peace." The door opened, and Captain Reed entered with two other officers. "Admiral, the first reconstruction ships have arrived at Ardini Prime, and the Vorn disarmament is proceeding ahead of schedule." Walker nodded. "Good. And what about Project Guardian?" "The first station will be operational within a month," Reed replied. "We'll have monitoring posts throughout the sector by year's end." Thela looked between them. "You're staying then. Humans will remain in our part of the galaxy. The Vorn may be defeated, but they're not the only predators out there," Walker said. "Besides, Earth has found its way to the stars now. There's no going back." As they spoke, ships from a dozen worlds moved through the system, a new alliance born from the ashes of war. Human vessels flew alongside Ardini ships, and even a few Vorn craft under new command. Thela watched the ships, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. "When we sent our message to Earth, we begged for help. We never imagined the response would change the galaxy forever." Walker placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's the thing about asking for help, Ambassador. You never know exactly what you'll get." Outside the viewport, a new ship came into view, larger than the others, with both human and Ardini script on its hull. Its name was written in glowing letters: "Peace through strength." "A new era begins," Walker said, watching the massive vessel. "Let's hope it's better than the one we just ended." The message came without warning. Captain Marcus Reed sat bolt upright in his command chair as the emergency alert flashed across the bridge of the EDF Sentinel. The ship had been on routine patrol at the edge of human space when the transmission cut through the silence. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," said Officer Taylor, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "It's not one of ours. The language pattern suggests alien origin." Marcus frowned. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. Their contacts with other intelligent species remained limited and carefully managed. Distress calls were rare. "Put it on screen," he ordered, straightening his uniform. The main display flickered, and a face appeared. The alien had pale blue skin with faint patterns across the forehead. Its large, dark eyes blinked rapidly in what Marcus recognized as extreme stress. "This is Ambassador Thala of the Alari Confederation," the translator processed. "Our homeworld is under attack. The Vex Dominion has invaded our system with overwhelming force. We cannot hold much longer. To any species receiving this message, we beg for assistance." Marcus watched as the camera shifted, showing scenes of devastation. Cities burning, ships falling from the sky, people running. "Send this to Earth Command immediately," Marcus ordered, "and plot a course to intercept with the transmission source." 3 days later, Ambassador Thala stood before the United Earth Council in the Great Hall in Geneva. Her slender frame seemed to tremble under the weight of her people's fate. "The Vex Dominion has conquered 3 civilizations before targeting us," she explained. "They offer only submission or extinction. We chose to fight, but our weapons are no match for theirs." The council members exchanged troubled glances. Admiral Ramos, head of Earth Defense, stood up. "While we sympathize with your situation, Ambassador, humanity has only recently reached the stars. Our military is designed for defense, not fighting wars across the galaxy." Marcus, standing at attention near the wall, watched as several council members nodded in agreement. Ambassador Thala touched a device on her wrist. A hologram appeared in the center of the room showing recordings of Vex attacks on other worlds. The systematic destruction was chilling. "These were the Brentari," she said as images showed a once advanced civilization reduced to ruins. "They thought isolation would protect them. They were wrong." The room fell silent as the recordings continued. The deliberate, methodical destruction of entire civilizations played out before them. Not conquest, but erasure. "We understand if you cannot help," Thala said, her voice breaking. "But know that after us, there will be others. The Vex will continue until they are stopped." Councillor Green, an older woman with steel-gray hair, spoke up. "What exactly are you asking of us, Ambassador?" Fight with us, Thala said simply. Your species approaches warfare differently than any we have encountered. Your history shows an adaptability and determination that might succeed where others failed. The debate lasted hours. Marcus was called to provide his assessment of the transmission and initial contact. Military advisors warned of overextension. Economists calculated costs. Ethicists argued moral obligations. As the final vote approached, Ambassador Thala stood once more. My people do not ask lightly for others to die in our defense, she said. But we have seen enough of the Vex to know they cannot be reasoned with, only defeated. If we fall, others will follow. The council voted 7-5 in favor of intervention. That evening, Marcus found himself reassigned as military liaison to the Alari. He watched from the observation deck as Earth's orbital shipyards began preparing vessels for combat deployment. Captain Reed, called a voice behind him. It was Ambassador Thala. Ambassador, he nodded respectfully. I must know, she said quietly. Why did your people agree to help us? You owe us nothing. Marcus looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth's long history of wars, of suffering, of fighting against impossible odds. Because, he said slowly, humans understand what it means to stand against darkness, and we've learned that some fights must be fought, no matter the cost. Thala didn't understand then what those words truly meant. None of the Alari did. They would soon enough. The Earth fleet arrived at the Alari homeworld 3 weeks later. 5 warships, led by the massive carrier EDF Valiant under Admiral Elena Winters. It wasn't much compared to the Vex Armada, but it was all Earth could spare on short notice. Admiral Winters stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display. The Alari defenses were failing. 3 planets in their home system had already fallen. Their ships have no armor, she noted, watching recordings of recent battles. They rely on shields and speed. Captain Marcus Reed nodded. The Alari never developed for war. They're traders and explorers. And the Vex? Elena asked. Nothing but war, Marcus replied. According to Thala, they've been conquering for centuries. A communications officer interrupted. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vex command ship. The main screen flickered to life, showing a being with dark gray skin and eyes that seemed to reflect no light. Armor plates covered most of its body. I am Commander Drakmar of the Vex Dominion, the translator processed. Your presence is unexpected, humans. This conflict does not concern you. Elena stepped forward. We've been invited by the Alari government. We're here to assist in their defense. Drakmar made a sound that might have been laughter. Many species have attempted to resist the Dominion. All have fallen. Leave now, and we will consider this a diplomatic error rather than an act of war. We decline your offer, Elena replied. We stand with the Alari. The transmission ended abruptly. Well, that went as expected, Elena said. Deploy the defensive satellites around the main colony. And get our ground teams ready. The Vex didn't wait long to test human resolve. 3 days after the Earth fleet's arrival, they launched a massive assault on the forward base established on Alari's second moon. Lieutenant James Walker led a platoon of Earth Marines when the attack came. The Vex troops moved with perfect coordination, advancing in formations that had likely worked against countless other species. They're coming straight at us, said Private Lopes, gripping her pulse rifle. No cover, no flanking. James nodded. They're used to enemies breaking and running. He switched to the command channel. All units, hold fire until they reach the marker. Then hit them with everything. The Vex marched forward, energy weapons blazing at the human fortifications. Their shots were precise but predictable. They seemed confused when the humans didn't return fire immediately. When the front line of Vex troops crossed the invisible line James had designated, he gave the order. Now, human weapons erupted from hidden positions, not just from the front where the Vex expected resistance, but from the sides, from bunkers that had appeared to be destroyed, from positions that should have been impossible to defend. The Vex formation broke apart under the unexpected assault pattern. They tried to adjust, but the humans kept changing tactics, falling back only to counterattack from new angles. By nightfall, the moon base remained in human hands. The cost had been high. 37 dead, over 60 wounded, but the Vex had lost hundreds. Admiral Winters visited the medical bay that evening. Many wounded soldiers continued checking their weapons even as medics treated them. "How soon can I return to duty?" one asked her, despite missing an arm. In the command center, Winters found Thala watching footage of the battle with wide eyes. "Your people," the Alari ambassador said quietly. "They fought even when surrounded, even when wounded. That's what humans do," Elena replied simply. On his ship, Commander Drakmar reviewed the battle recordings with growing concern. The humans fought unlike any species the Vex had encountered. They didn't break formation when leaders fell. They adapted tactics mid-battle. They seemed to fight harder when the situation worsened, not less. "Send a probe to their home system," he ordered his lieutenant. "I want to know more about these humans." Back on the Valiant, Admiral Winters drafted her report to Earth Command. At the end, she added, "The Vex expect us to fight like the others they've conquered. Their mistake will be our advantage. Request immediate deployment of the experimental weapon systems from Project Firestorm." The real war was just beginning. 3 months into the conflict, Earth had established a defensive line around the remaining Alari worlds. More ships arrived daily as humanity's production shifted to war footing. General Thomas Grant stepped off his transport onto the deck of the space station orbiting Alari Prime. A tall man with a weathered face and gray hair, he carried a small bag and a datapad containing military texts from Earth's long history of warfare. "General on deck," someone called, and the personnel snapped to attention. "At ease," Thomas said. "Where can I find Admiral Winters?" The command center buzzed with activity. Elena Winters looked up from the holographic display as Thomas entered. "General Grant," she said with a nod. "Welcome to the front lines." "Admiral, I hear you've been giving the Vex some trouble." Elena gestured to the display. "We've held them back, but they keep coming. They have more ships, more troops, more of everything." Thomas studied the battlefield. "Numbers aren't everything. Show me what we know about their tactics." For hours, they analyzed Vex battle patterns. The Vex fought the same way every time. Overwhelming force applied directly. They never retreated, never adapted. "They've conquered so many species they've forgotten how to face a real challenge," Thomas concluded. "We can use that." The next day, Thomas addressed the combined human Alari forces. "We're implementing new strategies based on Earth's military history. The Vex expect us to fight conventionally. We won't." Teams of human scientists worked alongside Alari engineers to modify their technologies. Alari ships were too lightly armored, but they were fast. Human weapons were powerful but drained energy quickly. Together, they created hybrid systems that confused Vex targeting computers. "They can't hit what they can't predict," Thomas explained to the Alari military leaders. "We'll use hit-and-run tactics. Strike hard, then disappear before they can respond." The Vex grew frustrated as their victories slowed. Commander Drakmar ordered a major assault on Colony Delta, an Alari farming world. "They're breaking through Sector 7, a communications officer reported as the attack began. Thomas watched calmly. "Evacuate all civilians from zones 8 through 15. "Sir." The Alari commander looked shocked. "Those are our most productive farming regions. And now they're bait," Thomas replied. "Order our forces in those sectors to fall back, but leave the automated defenses active." The Vex pushed forward, capturing the abandoned territories. They established forward bases, brought in reinforcement troops, and prepared for the next phase of their advance. That night, Thomas gave a simple order: execute Phoenix Protocol. Throughout the abandoned territories, hidden explosives detonated, reactor cores overloaded, atmosphere processors released chemicals that ignited in the air. The entire region became an inferno, destroying 3 Vex divisions and all their equipment. From the command center, the Aleri watched in horror. "You destroyed your own positions," said Commander Liren of the Aleri Defense Force. "We sacrificed territory to eliminate enemy forces," Thomas corrected. "In war, you must be willing to lose something to gain something greater." The Aleri had never seen such tactics. Their culture valued preservation above all else. "This is how Earth fights," Ambassador Thola asked quietly. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Winters replied. General Grant wrote his thesis on ancient Earth generals: Sun Tzu, Hannibal, Napoleon, Alexander. He studies how to win against impossible odds. Word of the battle spread quickly. Other alien species, who had watched silently as the Vex conquered world after world, began to take notice of the humans. On his flagship, Drakmar received reports of the defeat. "Impossible," he muttered. "They destroyed their own territory rather than let us have it." His lieutenant hesitated before speaking. "Commander, intelligence has analyzed human historical records. They have been fighting wars against themselves for thousands of years. They have experience we lack." Drakmar's eyes narrowed. "Send in the elite divisions. I want this resistance crushed before more humans arrive." Back at the command center, Thomas approved plans for the next phase. "The Vex think they understand war," he told his officers. "They don't. They understand conquest. We'll teach them the difference." 1 year into the war, Earth had fully committed to the fight. Back in the Sol system, Director Olivia Parker walked through the massive shipyard orbiting Jupiter. What had once built civilian vessels now produced warships at an incredible pace. "Production is up 20% this month," her assistant reported. "Every factory from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt is working at maximum capacity." Olivia nodded, watching as robotic arms assembled the hull of a new destroyer. "Send half of the new ships to the Rigel sector. Intelligence says the Vex are planning something big there." On the front lines, Admiral Winters received the warning. The Vex Supreme Command had dispatched their elite forces, the Crimson Guard, veterans of 100 conquered worlds. "They're coming for us specifically now," Elena told her officers. "We've annoyed them enough that they're bringing in their best." Captain Reed, now commanding his own ship, studied the intelligence reports. "The Crimson Guard has never failed a mission." "First time for everything," Elena replied with a grim smile. Unknown to the Vex, humans had been busy beyond the battlefield. For months, small teams had infiltrated Vex supply lines. They sabotaged fuel depots. They corrupted navigation data. They introduced small errors into manufacturing processes. Commander Davis led one such team. Disguised using captured Vex equipment, his soldiers planted explosives on a major supply carrier. "Charges set," his sergeant whispered over the comm. "We have 5 minutes to reach minimum safe distance." "Make it 3, Davis ordered. "We just got word. The Crimson Guard fleet will arrive at Rigel Prime tomorrow. Every ship we take out now means fewer weapons pointed at our people later." The supply carrier erupted in flames as Davis's team escaped. Across 20 systems, similar strikes occurred simultaneously. Operation Wasp's Nest, they called it. Death by 1,000 cuts. But the Vex still came. The Battle of Rigel Prime began at dawn. The Crimson Guard attacked with precision and coordination beyond anything the humans had yet faced. Their weapons cut through shields. Their tactics anticipated human maneuvers. "They've been studying us," General Grant realized as reports of heavy losses came in. For 3 days, the battle raged across the Rigel system. Human and Aleri ships fought desperately against the elite Vex forces. Ground troops held positions until they were overrun, then triggered explosives to deny the enemy their gains. On the 4th day, Elena Winter's flagship took a direct hit to the bridge. Emergency systems sealed the hull breach, but communications went down. The chain of command fragmented. Lieutenant Commander Alex Taylor found himself the senior officer on the destroyer Defiant. With the command structure broken, he made a decision. All ships, this is Acting Commander Taylor. Form up on the Defiant. We're going straight for their command vessel. Sir, we don't have the firepower, his weapons officer protested. We don't need to destroy it, Alex replied. We just need to get close enough. The Defiant led a desperate charge directly into the heart of the Vex formation. Ships exploded around them as they took hit after hit. When they were just 5,000 kilometers from the Vex flagship, far closer than anyone expected them to get, Alex gave his final order. Deploy the package. Small objects shot out from the Defiant's launch tubes. Not missiles, but specially designed drones carrying a virus created by Earth's best cyber warfare experts. The drones attached to the Vex flagship and injected the virus into their systems. Within minutes, chaos erupted in the Vex fleet. Ships fired on each other. Shields dropped. Communications failed. The remaining human forces rallied and counterattacked. What had been certain defeat became an unlikely victory. Later, in the medical bay, a wounded Alex received unexpected visitors, General Grant and Ambassador Thola. The Crimson Guard retreated. Grant informed him. First time in their history, you did the impossible today. Thola looked at the injured humans around her. I don't understand. By all logic, you should have surrendered when the battle turned against you. Alex laughed despite his pain. That's not how humans work. When the situation gets worse, we fight harder. On her flagship, Admiral Winters, bandaged but alive, reviewed the battle data. The victory had cost them dearly. Over 30% of their forces lost. But the Vex had lost more, including their aura of invincibility. She opened a channel to Earth Command. Request permission to implement Operation Mongoose. It's time we took the fight to them. News of the Crimson Guard's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had watched silently as the Vex conquered world after world began to whisper, perhaps the Dominion wasn't invincible after all. On the planet Teller, the ruling council debated late into the night. The humans have proven themselves capable warriors, said High Counselor Varen. They achieved what we thought impossible. But can they win the war? Asked another council member. The Vex still control much of the galaxy. Varen stood tall, his crystalline skin catching the light. We will never know unless we join them. I vote we end our neutrality. 2 days later, a Tellurian delegation arrived at the human Alari Command Center. Their ships were unlike anything humans had seen. Beautiful vessels that seemed to be made of living crystal. Commander Marcus Reed, now in charge of the combined fleet, met with the Tellurian representatives. Your people have fought bravely, said Ambassador Kelrin of the Tellurians. We wish to join your alliance. Our technology may be of use to you. Marcus had been a captain when the war began. Now he coordinated strategy with representatives from 7 different species, each bringing unique abilities to the fight. The more the Vex push us, the more allies we make, he told General Grant. They've never faced a coalition like this before. The Vex Dominion was feeling the strain. For the first time in centuries, they had to fight on multiple fronts. Resources that once seemed limitless began to dwindle. Some conquered worlds, seeing the Dominion's attention divided, started their own rebellions. Earth deployed its newest weapons, drone swarms that could adapt to Vex countermeasures in real time. Designed by the brilliant Dr. Patel, these machines learned and evolved during battle. They can identify patterns in Vex defenses faster than any human operator, Dr. Patel explained during the military briefing, and they communicate with each other to share what they learn. The first deployment of the drones at the Battle of Proxima Centauri resulted in a decisive victory. 3 Vex battle groups were destroyed with minimal Alliance casualties. But the Vex were far from defeated. Desperate to regain momentum, they launched a surprise attack not on the front lines, but directly at humanity's home. The assault on Mars came without warning. Vex drop ships descended on human colonies, their weapons targeting civilian structures. Millions of colonists fled underground as the Vex systematically destroyed cities built over generations. From Earth, people watched in horror as live feeds showed the devastation. Emergency sessions of the United Earth Council convened immediately. "They're trying to break our will to fight," said Councillor Green, her face grim on the video feed. "They think by threatening our homes, we'll abandon the Alari and our other allies." Council President Rivera stood slowly. "Then they understand nothing about humanity. When we are threatened directly, we don't retreat. We commit fully." He looked around the chamber. "I call for a vote to declare total war." The measure passed unanimously. Every resource, every factory, every ship would now be dedicated to the war effort. Civilian production would be converted to military needs. Mandatory service would be implemented across all human territories. On the front lines, Ambassador Thulla watched the humans after news of the Mars attack reached them. She had expected panic or despair. Instead, she saw something that made her blood run cold, a calm, focused fury unlike anything she had witnessed before. "You seem different," she said to Marcus as he issued orders for fleet redeployment. "The Vex made a miscalculation," he replied without looking up from his console. "Before, we were fighting for allies. Now we're fighting for our homes." "Is there a difference?" she asked. Admiral Winters, entering the command center, answered instead. "When we fight for allies, we do so with courage and determination. When we fight for our homes—" She paused, her eyes hard. "We do so with a resolve that borders on the pathological." The Vex just ensured their own destruction. Across human space, a saying began to spread. The Vex wanted war. Now they'll learn the difference between war and total war. 3 years into the war, the tide had turned. The combined Alliance fleet, now led by Supreme Commander William Reed, pushed steadily toward the Vex core systems. "Operation Thunderstrike begins in 6 hours," William announced to the assembled commanders. His face showed the strain of countless battles, but his eyes remained sharp and determined. "This is the largest coordinated assault in the history of the Alliance." The holographic display showed their target: 5 key Vex production facilities that supplied the Dominion's war machine. Without them, the Vex would lose their ability to replace ships and weapons. Captain Laura Hayes studied the defenses around her assigned target. Her special operations team would need to infiltrate the central facility, while the main fleet engaged the Vex defense forces. "This is a suicide mission," her second-in-command muttered as they reviewed the plan. Laura nodded. "Probably. But if we succeed, we save millions of lives." Across the galaxy, the Alliance launched simultaneous attacks. Human ships led the charge, supported by the crystalline vessels of the Tellurians and the swift strike crafts of the Alari. The Vex, for the first time, found themselves overwhelmed on multiple fronts. Commander Drakmar, once confident and dismissive, now fought desperately to hold his forces together. The humans had changed everything. Species that once surrendered now fought with renewed hope. Planets that had been under Vex control for generations were rising in rebellion. "Deploy the World Breakers," he ordered, his voice cold. His lieutenant hesitated. "Commander, those weapons were forbidden by the Supreme Council. The environmental damage—" "I don't care," Drakmar shouted. "The alternative is defeat. Deploy them immediately." On the contested world of Neris IV, Alliance forces watched in horror as Vex ships released clouds of nanites into the atmosphere. Within hours, the air turned toxic. Plants withered and died. The ocean began to boil. "They're destroying the planet rather than let us have it," General Grant reported to Supreme Commander Reed. "The same is happening on 3 other worlds." William's face hardened. "Then we no longer have time for a gradual advance. Implement Phase 2 of Thunderstrike." Back on Earth, scientists had been studying Vex technology captured in earlier battles. Dr. Maya Lee made a critical discovery in her lab beneath the Himalayan mountains. The Vex use a unique quantum communication network, she explained to military officials. Their ships and command centers are linked in ways that make them incredibly coordinated, but also vulnerable. Her team developed a virus that could potentially disrupt the entire Vex command structure. The problem was delivering it to their central communication hub, buried deep in Vex territory. This was Captain Hayes' mission. Her team's ship was disguised as a damaged Vex transport as it approached the heavily guarded space station that housed the communication hub. "They're scanning us," her pilot warned. "Transmit the clearance codes we captured," Laura ordered, her heart pounding. "And be ready to fight our way in if they don't work." The codes worked, barely. Their ship was directed to a maintenance dock. Laura and her team, wearing captured Vex armor, moved quickly through the station. They had memorized its layout from intelligence reports, but they knew security would be tight. "We have 15 minutes before the shift change," Laura whispered. "After that, our disguises won't help us." They reached the central control room with 5 minutes to spare. As Laura's tech specialist uploaded the virus, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. "We've been made," shouted her second-in-command as Vex security forces converged on their position. "Keep uploading," Laura ordered as she and the others formed a defensive perimeter. "We don't leave until it's done." The firefight was brutal and close quarters. One by one, Laura's team fell. The virus upload reached 90% as she took a hit to her shoulder, 95% as another blast grazed her helmet. "Upload complete," called the tech specialist just before a Vex energy beam struck him in the chest. Laura, now the only one left standing, hit the transmit button. The virus entered the Vex network and began to spread. Across Vex territory, their ships suddenly lost coordination. Some fired on their allies. Others shut down completely. Command centers received contradictory orders. The Alliance fleet, seeing the chaos, pressed their advantage. As the Vex defenses crumbled, William Reed ordered all forces to advance toward the Vex homeworld. On his flagship, Drakmar received an unprecedented message from the Vex Supreme Council. "Initiate contact with human leadership. Discuss terms for cessation of hostilities." After centuries of conquest, the Vex were offering to surrender. Representatives from 27 species gathered in the Great Hall on the neutral world of Centauri Prime. Once enemies or strangers, they now stood together to witness something no living being had ever seen: the formal surrender of the Vex Dominion. Admiral Alina Winters led the human delegation. Her uniform bore the scars of battle, just as her face carried the marks of a war that had lasted nearly 4 years. She walked with a slight limp from an injury that never fully healed. The Vex Supreme Council entered the hall. Unlike Commander Drakmar's intimidating presence, these leaders appeared almost frail. Their once mighty empire had crumbled in months once humanity brought its full force to bear. High Counselor Vorn of the Vex approached the center table where the document waited. His voice, translated for all present, carried across the silent room. "For 8 centuries, the Dominion has known only victory. Today, we acknowledge defeat." He looked directly at Alina. "The humans fought unlike any species we have encountered. We did not understand what we faced until it was too late." Alina stepped forward. Her voice was steady but held no triumph, only the weariness of someone who had seen too much death. "This document outlines the terms of surrender," she said. "The Vex military will be disbanded. Your conquest fleets will be dismantled. But your civilization will continue. Your people will live. This was never about destruction, only about stopping aggression." The signing took less than 5 minutes. With a few marks on paper, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was ended. Later that day, memorial services began across human and Alari worlds. On Earth, people gathered in parks and squares to honor the millions lost. The monuments did not distinguish between species. Human names were listed alongside Alari, Tellurian, and others who had died fighting together. On the orbiting station above Centauri Prime, Ambassador Thulla found Alina standing alone by a viewport, looking out at the stars. "I remember when you first arrived to help us," Thulla said. "We were grateful, but we did not understand what it meant when humans commit to a cause." Alina nodded. "Few do, until they've seen it." Your people have paid a terrible price for a war that wasn't yours to begin with, Thola continued. The Aleri will never forget this debt. It became our war the moment we agreed to help, Alina replied. That's something the Vex never understood about humans. We don't calculate odds of victory before deciding whether to fight. We decide what's worth fighting for, then find a way to win, whatever the cost. General Thomas Grant joined them, his uniform now bearing the 5 stars of Earth's highest military rank. The Alliance Council is meeting to discuss the future, he informed them. With the Vex gone, there's talk of establishing a permanent coalition, a united front to prevent anything like this from happening again. Alina smiled for the first time in what felt like years. Then something good may come from all this loss. On Earth, in the old United Nations building in Geneva, the United Earth Council held its final session on the war. President Rivera addressed the assembled representatives. Today, we honor those who did not return, he said, and we begin the process of turning back to peaceful pursuits. Our factories will build homes instead of warships. Our scientists will study healing instead of weapons. This is the true victory, not that we defeated an enemy, but that we can now return to being who we truly wish to be. That evening, in a small garden outside the conference center, a young Aleri child approached a human veteran who sat quietly on a bench. My parents say we would all be gone if humans hadn't helped us, the child said. Why did you fight so hard for people you didn't even know? The veteran looked at the child, then up at the stars becoming visible in the evening sky. His answer was simple. Because you asked for help, and we know what it's like to stand alone against the darkness. He placed a hand gently on the child's shoulder. Remember this, the universe can be cruel and cold, but as long as humans exist, you are never truly alone. When someone pleads for help against tyranny, we will answer, every time. And across the galaxy, former Vex territories looked to the stars with hope instead of fear, knowing that a new age had begun, one where the strong protected the weak, and no one stood alone.